Well, Israel's new fledgling coalition has just taken a major blow. Israel's parliament has failed to pass an extension to the controversial Palestinian family reunification law after a rebel member of Prime Minister Bennett's party voted against the measure. Now, the law bars Palestinians from the West Bank or the Gaza Strip who marry Israelis from being granted Israeli citizenship rights. This law was first enacted back in 2003, and ever since it's been extended annually, which is why Israeli Prime Minister Bennett set up a vote on the citizenship law as a vote of confidence in his new ideologically diverse government. Well, after last night's tense late-night debate on the matter, his government failed to muster a majority, and the vote was tied 59-59 in Israel's 120-seat parliament. Well, joining us to break this down is our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman. So, Owen, first of all, what is this family reunification law, and why was it first enacted?
Natasha, this is a provision, as you mentioned, about what happens when foreign citizens marry Israelis. In general, if a foreign national marries an Israeli, that person can come live here with his or her spouse and ultimately potentially become an Israeli citizen, him or herself. What this law did back in 2003 and then extended year in, year out since then is it set up a different set of rules for Palestinians, ultimately also, we should say, for Syrians, Iraqis, Iranians who want to marry Israelis. They don't automatically get that status, and they're not allowed to ultimately become Israeli citizens, so it creates a different set of rules for them. Now, supporters of this law say it's necessary for Israel's security. It was actually passed originally in 2003 when there was a real concern at the height of the Second Intifada that Palestinian terror groups would use this law as a way of essentially smuggling their terrorists into Israel, getting them easy status inside Israel to be able to conduct terror attacks. There are also supporters who say that it's important for Israel's demographics to help protect Israel's Jewish majority. On the other hand, the opponents, what do they say? They say that this is basically discrimination and that it's racist. So those are the basic contours of the substantive debate over the rules.
So now that this extension hasn't actually been passed, the question is, does this mean that Palestinians married to Israelis can now simply claim citizenship?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. What it does mean is that the Interior Ministry, the Shin Bet Security Service, Natasha, they're going to have to go petition by petition by petition. They can reject all of the petitions, but you potentially have to go to court. It's not going to be as smooth or as easy as it was when this rule was in effect.
Now, former Prime Minister Netanyahu was the driving force behind this law in the first place. You know, why was he so keen to vote against it? Because obviously there are a lot of political questions surrounding this.
Netanyahu was keen to vote against because he wanted to make a point. He wanted to make a point that this coalition can't govern the country. They can't pass a law that has wide support among the Israeli public. They're too disorganized. They can't be effective. And to drive that message home, he was willing to get votes out against a law that in principle he believed in. And yes, there's some potential risk for the Likud party and for Netanyahu in that. Maybe his voters won't like that. Maybe potential voters who Netanyahu would want to convince in a future election won't like that. But it's a risk Netanyahu was willing to take.